The call came at 2 in the morning. John was awake. He'd been awake for hours, sitting by the window of the apartment on Bank Street, watching the street lights flicker across the pavement below. Yoko was asleep in the next room. The city never stopped moving, even at this hour. Somewhere down the block, a car door slammed. A man laughed. The sound carried up through the cold air and disappeared. The phone rang once, twice. He let it ring a third time before he picked it up. No one spoke on the other end, just breathing. Slow, deliberate. Then a voice, low and measured, like someone reading from a script they'd memorized. "You need to cancel the show." John didn't say anything. He could hear traffic in the background on the other end of the line. The hum of an engine. The person wasn't calling from home. "Did you hear me?" The voice said. "I heard you." "Then you know what you need to do." "Who is this?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is you listen. Cancel the show. Walk away, or there will be consequences." The line went dead. John sat there holding the receiver against his ear, listening to the dial tone. His hand wasn't shaking, but his chest felt tight. He set the phone down slowly, carefully, like it might break if he moved too fast. Then he stood and walked to the window again. The street below looked the same as it had 5 minutes ago. Same lights, same shadows, same city that never stopped moving. But something had changed. This was New York in 1972. The war was still going. Kids were still dying in a jungle on the other side of the world while people here argued about it over dinner and changed the channel when the news got too heavy. John had been loud about it. Too loud, some people said. He'd shown up at rallies, sung at protests, put his name on things that made the government nervous. The FBI had a file on him now, thick enough to matter. They wanted him gone, out of the country, back to England where he couldn't cause problems. But he wasn't leaving. Not yet. Not while there was still something to say. The show they were talking about, the one he was supposed to cancel, it wasn't just a concert. It was a benefit. Money for families who'd lost people to the war. A way to turn grief into something that might help someone else carry theirs. He'd been planning it for weeks. The venue was set. The musicians were ready. Tickets were sold. People were counting on it. And now someone wanted it stopped. John walked back to the phone. He thought about calling someone. The police. A lawyer. Someone who might know what to do. But what would he say? "A man called and told me to cancel a concert." They'd ask questions he didn't have answers to. They'd want details he didn't have. And in the end, they'd probably tell him to do exactly what the voice on the phone had told him to do. Cancel. Walk away. Stay safe. He didn't call anyone. Instead, he made coffee, stood in the kitchen and watched the water boil, and thought about what fear actually was. Not the word, the thing itself. The way it moved through your body. The way it wanted you to close doors and turn off lights, and make yourself smaller until you disappeared. By the time the sun came up, he knew he wasn't canceling anything. The man who owned the venue was named Sal. He was older, maybe 60, thick hands and a heavy face and eyes that looked tired even when he smiled. He'd been in the city his whole life, ran clubs, managed rooms, knew everyone who mattered and most of the people who didn't. When John had first approached him about using the space, Sal had seemed fine with it, excited even. He'd shaken John's hand and said it was an honor. Said he believed in what John was trying to do. But that was before the call. 2 days after the phone rang in the middle of the night, John went to see Sal. The venue was an old theater on the Lower East Side, the kind of place that had seen better decades. The marquee was missing letters. The lobby smelled like dust and cigarette smoke, and something sweet that might have been perfume from 30 years ago. Sal was in his office, a cramped room behind the stage with a desk buried under papers, and a calendar on the wall that was still showing March, even though it was already June. He looked up when John walked in. Didn't smile this time. "You shouldn't be here," Sal said. I got a call, John said. I know. You know? Sal leaned back in his chair. It creaked under his weight. He looked at John for a long time like he was deciding something. Then he sighed. Look, he said, I like you. I mean that. And I think what you're doing, standing up, speaking out, I think it's brave. But brave doesn't pay the rent. Brave doesn't keep people safe. Who called me, Sal? Does it matter? It matters to me. Sal rubbed his face with both hands. There are people in this city who don't like attention. Your show, it brings cameras, it brings reporters, it brings the kind of people who ask questions. Some folks, they don't want those questions asked. What people? The kind you don't ask about. John sat down in the chair across from the desk. It wobbled. One leg was shorter than the others. He didn't try to fix it. I'm not canceling, John said. Sal looked at him. Really looked at him. There was something in his expression that wasn't quite pity and wasn't quite respect. Maybe it was both. You don't understand, Sal said quietly. These aren't people you say no to. I just did. That was on the phone. That was easy. This is different. They'll come here. They'll find you. And when they do, it won't be a conversation. Then let them come. Sal shook his head. You think you're tough because you wrote some songs? Because you stood on a stage and told people to imagine a better world? That's not toughness. That's performance. This is real. This is the kind of thing that ends with someone getting hurt. Maybe, John said. But it's not going to end with me running. He stood up. The chair wobbled again behind him. I'll see you at the show, Sal. He left before Sal could say anything else. The next 3 days were strange. Nothing happened. No more calls. No threats. No one showed up at the apartment or followed him down the street. It was almost worse than the call itself, the waiting, the not knowing. John tried to keep moving. Rehearsed with the band. Checked the set list. Made sure the sound system was working. But the whole time, he felt like he was walking through a room with the lights off, waiting to hit something he couldn't see. Yoko asked him if he was okay. He told her he was. She didn't believe him, but she didn't push. The night before the show, he couldn't sleep again. He lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about his son. Julian was in England with his mother. Safe. Far from all of this. John wondered what he would tell him if something happened. How do you explain to a child that you chose a concert over your own safety? How do you make that sound like anything other than selfishness? But it wasn't selfish. Was it? He didn't know anymore. At some point he must have fallen asleep, because when he opened his eyes again, it was morning. Light was coming through the window. Yoko was already up. He could hear her in the kitchen, making tea. He got dressed, put on the same clothes he'd worn the day before. Jeans. A t-shirt. Nothing special. He wasn't trying to make a statement. He was just trying to get through the day. The venue looked different in daylight. Smaller. More fragile. The marquee looked even worse without the cover of darkness. The letters that were still there spelled out half of his name and none of the date. But inside, the place was alive. Crew members were moving equipment, testing lights, rolling cables across the stage. Someone was tuning a guitar in the corner. The sound echoed through the empty seats. John stood in the middle of the theater and looked around. This was it. This was what someone thought was worth threatening him over. An old room with bad wiring and peeling paint and seats that smelled like decades of other people's nights out. It didn't make sense. But fear rarely did. He was backstage, going over the set list one more time when Sal found him. They're here, Sal said. John looked up. Who? The people I told you about. Sal's face was pale. His hands were shaking. He looked like a man who'd just seen something he couldn't unsee. Where? John asked. Out front, in the lobby. They want to talk to you. How many? 3. John set down the set list. His own hands were steady, but his heart was beating faster than it should. He took a breath. Let it out slowly. Okay, he said. Okay? Sal stared at him. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say? I want you to run. I want you to get out of here while you still can. I'm not running, Sal. Then you're a fool. Maybe. John walked past him, toward the lobby. Sal didn't follow. The three men were standing near the entrance. They weren't what John had expected. No suits. No sunglasses. No movie-style intimidation. They looked like regular people. One of them was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and a jacket that didn't fit quite right. The other two were younger. One had his hands in his pockets. The other was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, watching John like he was trying to figure something out. The older man stepped forward. "You're Lennon," he said. It wasn't a question. "I am. I'm Tony." He didn't offer his last name. Didn't offer his hand either. "We need to talk." "So talk." Tony glanced at the other two men, then back at John. "Not here. Outside. I'm fine here." It wasn't a request. John didn't move. For a long moment, no one said anything. The lobby was quiet except for the sound of someone hammering something backstage. The noise echoed through the walls. Finally, Tony sighed. "Look, we're not here to hurt you. We just need you to understand the situation." "I understand it." "Do you?" Tony took a step closer. He wasn't threatening. Not exactly. But there was weight in the way he moved. Like he was used to people getting out of his way. "You're putting on a show. A political show. With cameras and press and a whole lot of noise. That noise, it attracts attention. And attention, in this neighborhood, it's bad for business." "What business?" Tony smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The kind that doesn't get discussed in lobbies. "So you want me to cancel. We want you to be smart. I don't think those are the same thing." The younger man against the wall spoke up. His voice was rougher than Tony's. Harder. "You think this is a joke? You think we came down here to have a conversation?" Tony held up a hand. "Easy. No." The younger man pushed off the wall. "He needs to hear this. We gave him a warning. He ignored it. That was his chance to do this the easy way. Now we're here, face to face. And he's still acting like he's got a choice." John looked at him. Really looked at him. The man was angry. That much was obvious. But there was something else underneath it. Something that looked almost like fear. "Why does this bother you so much?" John asked. The question seemed to catch the man off guard. He blinked. "What? The show. Why does it bother you?" "It doesn't bother me. It's business. It's more than that." John kept his voice calm, quiet. "You're angry. I can see it. So I'm asking, why?" The man opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Tony like he was waiting for permission to speak. Tony didn't give it. "Doesn't matter why," Tony said. "What matters is, you cancel. And if I don't, then we'll cancel it for you." John felt the fear again. The same tightness in his chest he'd felt when the phone rang. But this time he didn't try to push it away. He let it sit there. Let it be what it was. "I lost someone," the younger man said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. "What?" Tony said. "I lost someone," the man repeated. He wasn't looking at Tony anymore. He was looking at John, my brother. 2 years ago. He was in Vietnam. He didn't come back. The lobby felt smaller. The air felt heavier. "I'm sorry," John said. "I don't want your sorry." The man's voice cracked. "Just a little. Just enough to matter. I want you to stop pretending like any of this matters. The protests, the concerts, the speeches. None of it brings anyone back. None of it stops the next kid from getting on a plane. It's just noise." John didn't say anything right away. He thought about Julian again, about what it would be like to lose him. To get a call in the middle of the night that wasn't a threat but a notification, a confirmation, A door closing that could never be opened again. You're right, John said finally. The man blinked. What? You're right. It doesn't bring anyone back, and it probably won't stop the next kid from going. But it might stop the one after that. Or the one after that. I don't know. Maybe that's noise. Maybe it's all just noise. But it's the only thing I know how to do. The man stared at him. His jaw was tight. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. And your brother John continued. He didn't die so you could threaten people in lobbies. He didn't die so you could make the world smaller and meaner. He died because someone told him it mattered. That going over there, fighting, bleeding, it mattered. And maybe it did. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I know this. If the only thing we do with our grief is turn it into more fear, more threats, more silence, then what did any of it mean? The younger man looked like he'd been hit. His face went red, then pale, then something else entirely. He turned and walked out of the lobby without saying another word. Tony watched him go. Then he looked back at John. That was stupid, Tony said quietly. Probably. You don't know what you just did. I know exactly what I did. Tony studied him. There was something in his expression now that hadn't been there before. Not respect, exactly. But maybe the beginning of it. The show goes on? Tony asked. The show goes on. Tony nodded slowly. Then he reached into his jacket. John's whole body tensed, but Tony didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a piece of paper. Folded. Worn. He held it out. John took it. It was a photograph. Black and white. Two boys standing in front of a car. One of them was smiling. The other was trying not to. They looked like brothers. That's him, Tony said. That's Frankie, the one who just walked out. And that's his brother, Michael. Mikey, we called him. He was a good kid. Funny. Always getting into trouble, but the harmless kind. When he enlisted, Frankie tried to stop him. They fought about it. Said terrible things to each other. Things you don't take back. Mikey went anyway. And then Mikey didn't come home. John looked at the photo. At the two boys who would never stand like that again. Frankie blames everyone, Tony said. The government. The protesters. Himself. He needs someone to be angry at, because if he stops being angry, he'll have to feel everything else. And he can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Why are you telling me this? John asked. Because I want you to understand. This isn't about business. It was never about business. Frankie heard about your show. Heard you were raising money for families who lost people. And he couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand the idea that someone was trying to make meaning out of something that destroyed him. So he asked me to make it stop. And I owe him. I owe him more than I can ever repay. So I made the call. I came here. But now, Tony trailed off. He looked tired. Older than he had when John had first walked into the lobby. Now I think maybe he needs to see it, Tony finished. The show. The people. The families who are still trying to hold on. Maybe he needs to know he's not alone in this. John handed the photo back. Bring him tonight. He won't come. Bring him anyway. Tony took the photo. Looked at it one more time. Then he put it back in his jacket. If this goes bad, Tony said, if something happens, it won't. You don't know that. No, John said, I don't. Tony left. The other man, the one who'd been silent the whole time, followed him out. The lobby was empty again. Just John and the sound of hammering backstage and the smell of dust and old memories. Sal appeared from somewhere. He looked like he'd been holding his breath the entire time. What happened? Sal asked. Nothing, John said. We talked. That's it? You talked? That's it. And the show goes on. Sal laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. Almost bitter. You're out of your mind. Probably. John walked back toward the stage. He had work to do. The theater was full that night. Every seat. People standing in the back. Some sitting in the aisles. The energy in the room was electric, but not in the way it usually was at concerts. This was different. Heavier. Like everyone had brought something with them that they didn't know what to do with. John stood backstage and looked out through the curtain. He could see faces. Some young, some old. Some looked hopeful. Some looked broken. All of them were there for the same reason. To remember, to grieve, to try to find something in the noise that made sense. He didn't see Tony. Didn't see Frankie. Maybe they hadn't come. Maybe they were never going to. The lights dimmed. The crowd went quiet. John picked up his guitar. It felt heavier than usual. Or maybe he was just more aware of its weight. He walked out onto the stage. The applause was immediate. Loud. He didn't acknowledge it. Just stood there in the light and waited for it to fade. When it did, the silence was total. He started to play. The first song was quiet. Simple. Just his voice and the guitar and the space between the notes. He sang about loss. About distance. About the people we carry with us even after they're gone. The words didn't try to fix anything. They didn't promise hope or offer solutions. They just sat there. Honest. And raw. And let people feel what they needed to feel. Halfway through the second song, he saw them. Tony and Frankie. Standing near the back. Frankie's arms were crossed. His face was hard. But he was there. He was listening. John didn't change what he was doing. Didn't acknowledge them. Just kept playing. Kept singing. Let the music do what music does. By the fourth song, some people in the crowd were crying. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet tears that caught the light and disappeared into the dark. By the sixth song, Frankie's arms weren't crossed anymore. By the end, John looked out at the crowd and saw something he hadn't expected. Not healing. Not closure. Those were too big, too neat. But maybe the beginning of something. A small crack in the wall that grief builds around people. A reminder that they weren't alone. When it was over, the applause came again. Louder this time. John set down his guitar and walked off stage. He didn't bow. Didn't wave. Just walked. Backstage, Sal was waiting. "You did it," Sal said. "We did it." "No. You did." "I didn't think." Sal stopped. Shook his head. "I didn't think it was possible." John didn't say anything. Later, after the crowd had left and the crew had started tearing down the equipment, John was sitting on the edge of the stage when Tony appeared. "Good show," Tony said. "Thanks. Frankie wanted me to give you something." Tony held out an envelope. John took it. Inside was the photograph. The two boys. The car. The smile. "He said to keep it," Tony said. "Said maybe you'd understand what to do with it better than he does right now." John looked at the photo. At Mikey's face. At the way Frankie was trying not to smile. "Tell him I'll take care of it," John said. "I will." Tony started to leave, then stopped. "And John?" "Yeah? I'm sorry. For the call. For the threats. For all of it." "I know." Tony nodded. Then he left. John sat there for a while longer, holding the photograph. The theater was almost empty now. Just a few crew members moving through the dark. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear the city. The same sounds he'd heard from his window at 2 a.m. Cars. Voices. Life that didn't stop just because the world was heavy. He thought about fear. About how it tries to make you smaller. How it tells you the only way to be safe is to disappear. He thought about Frankie and the brother he'd lost, and the anger that was really grief in disguise. He thought about Tony and the call that had started all of this, and the photograph now in his hands. And he thought about the choice he'd made. To show up. To stay. To let the show go on even when it would have been easier, safer to walk away. He didn't know if it had been the right choice. He didn't know if there even was a right choice in situations like this. But he knew he'd made it. And he knew he could live with it. Yoko found him there, still sitting on the edge of the stage. "Ready to go home?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "I'm ready." They walked out together. Into the night. Into the city that never stopped moving. Behind them, The theater went dark. The lights clicked off one by one. The marquee with its missing letters stopped glowing. And the street returned to what it always was. Just a street. Just a building. Just another night. But for the people who'd been there, who'd sat in those seats and listened to those songs and carried their grief into that room and carried something different out, it was more than that. It was a moment when someone chose not to run. When fear tried to close a door and one man, with a guitar and a quiet kind of courage, kept it open. Not forever. Not for everyone. But for that night. For those people. It was enough. The photograph stayed with John for years. He never framed it. Never put it on display. Just kept it in a drawer, folded and worn. A reminder of the night when a threat became a conversation and a conversation became something like understanding. He never knew what happened to Frankie after that. Never saw him again. Didn't know if the show had changed anything for him, or if he'd walked out of that theater the same as he'd walked in. But sometimes that's how it works. You don't get to see the ending. You don't get to know if what you did mattered in the way you hoped it would. You just do it. You show up. You stay. You let the music play and the words hang in the air and trust that somewhere, somehow, it reaches the person who needs to hear it. And maybe, if you're lucky, someone like Tony shows up one day and tells you it did. That the angry kid in the lobby found a way to breathe a little easier. That the weight didn't disappear, but became something he could carry. That the photograph he gave away found a home with someone who understood what it meant. Or maybe you never hear anything at all. Either way, you still have to choose. Fear or courage. Silence or sound. Running or staying. John chose. And somewhere in New York in 1972, in a theater with missing letters and old memories, that choice echoed in ways he would never fully know. But the people who were there knew. And maybe that was enough.